Here's Avril Haines, Director of National Intelligence, testifying before the Senate Intelligence Committee, and Senator Marco Rubio asking questions.
Does Ukraine have any biological weapons research facilities?
No, let me be clear. We do not assess that Ukraine is pursuing either biological weapons or nuclear weapons, which have been some of the, basically the propaganda that Russia is putting out.
And this follows a pattern that we have seen with the U.S. intelligence community putting out information as soon as they have it as some form of deterrent. And it's actually been working in many cases, particularly in the early part of this conflict when Russia was engaging in false flag operations. We reassemble the panel now for more on this with Bloomberg Politics contributors Jeannie Shanzano and Rick Davis. Jeannie, is this the way it should go with the White House press secretary tweeting false claims as soon as they arrive in the hands of American intelligence?
It's certainly a new way to wage a war, and it has to go this way. And I think another really chilling aspect of this story is the fact that China has joined Russia in making these false claims. You know, the foreign minister a couple times now has accused the United States of being engaged in the building of biological and chemical weapons. And when asked about it, he has doubled down on that. So while China has wanted to sort of turn away from what is happening in Ukraine, it has not turned away from this information war and joining Russia. And that is a very, very scary proposition.
CIA Director William Burns also testified during the hearing.
This is something, as all of you know very well, is very much a part of Russia's playbook. They've used those weapons against their own citizens. They've at least encouraged the use in Syria and elsewhere. So it's something we take very seriously.
I'm sure you take it seriously, Rick Davis. Is it something that you expect to see? Would that not, we talk about war crimes, we're hearing allegations of war crimes. Would that not escalate things beyond what we've seen yet?
Oh, certainly would. I mean, the use of biological or weapons of mass destruction are an additionally huge charge. And we've been talking about escalation all this time. You know, what is the Western community's response to use of weapons of mass destruction? You know, we made the mistake a few years ago, and I hate to go back to Syria again, but we actually allowed Vladimir Putin to be in charge of a stockpile of weapons of mass destruction that the Assad regime had. You know, remember Barack Obama, well, we put it, Russians are there and they're going to take care of those things. And then they used them against the people of Syria. And so I think one of the things, too, I was watching the John Kirby press conference, the spokesman for the Defense Department. These are fascinating, and press were asking him about this yesterday. And he asked me, he's like, are you serious? Do I have to answer that question? Are you now just aping Russian propaganda? I mean, so I think there's a piece on this that we have to think about, and that is, how is the press handling this? Because there is no free press in Russia, right? Russians are only hearing what the propagandists are giving them. And yet, are we chasing around the propaganda that the Russians are sticking out, and the Chinese, as Jeannie says, and treating it as if, you know, it's equal to fact? And so I think those are the kinds of things that I think we have to deal with as a modern war community, where we have an opponent in Russia who are willing to say and do anything to support what they're doing. The latest claims on the bombing of the maternity ward in the hospital, oh no, these weren't pregnant women. It was a battalion of terrorists. And I mean, it's outrageous. And so I think we've got to call them out. And I think the administration's strategy of moving our intelligence community out there is smart. But we also have to look inside and say, hey, should we even be reporting this kind of propaganda?
Well, should then the press secretary not have tweeted that last night, Rick? I guess I'm curious for your take on that, because some suggested that putting all of this stuff out about a false flag operation, letting people know in advance what they were hearing about Russian intelligence, was actually a deterrent. Are you suggesting otherwise?
You know, I can't tell, right? I don't know if it's a deterrent to anything. I don't think anything we do is a deterrent to Vladimir Putin, right? We put all this stuff out about Vladimir Putin next week will be invading Ukraine, and everyone said at the time, hey, this is brilliant. We're using intelligence to deter him. It did not deter him one single day, right? He was always going to invade. He did it on his timetable. He didn't care what we said or did about it. And I think we don't want to kid ourselves, right? We should be warning him every single day about the conduct of this war. We should be making diplomatic protestations in China today for spreading falsehoods. It's okay to call him out on it, but let's actually try to take actions that will either punish him immediately for it, like new sanctions or new weapon systems going to the Ukraine that otherwise wouldn't be there, if not for the fact that he's now looking like he's setting up a false flag event for use of weapons of mass destruction.
Jeannie, we're at the 3-week mark today. When I hear Rick talk like this, when I hear Mitt Romney, when I hear Joni Ernst, I hear the calls to do more, just send the jets, for instance. How long can Joe Biden promise Americans that the United States military will not be involved in this?
It is going to be increasingly tough. I mean, the maternity ward attack that Rick just mentioned, you see those devastating pictures. We're surrounded by them 24/7 on our cell phones and our iPhones, and it becomes increasingly hard for the president to maintain this pledge. I think he's going to try to do that. And I would say, another thing that we haven't talked a lot about tonight, but I think is very real in the near future, is the threat of a cyber attack, both in the United States and in the West. And, one question that has been asked that the administration has not responded to as directly is the question of, if there is an attack, say, on our transportation systems, oil, food, whatever it is, are we going to respond with forces on the ground then? Will the military get involved, or does this have to be Russian military over the line in a NATO country? Those are very real questions, and this sort of silence on cyber so far from Russia is a very scary proposition to many experts, because it can't be but a matter of time before they use their skills in cyber to launch some very devastating attacks in the West.
Well, so what do you think, Rick? Is it not just a matter of time before the American military is somehow involved here? If Vladimir Putin does not care about sanctions, doesn't care about the strategy here of putting out intelligence when the U.S. receives it, what's going to keep him from bombing a supply line, creeping over the border in Poland or Moldova? It's just, how realistic is this approach?
Well, first of all, two things. One, if they do invade or attack anything in a NATO country, then that's a different set of circumstances. Then U.S. troops will be involved, right? And Germany troops will be involved, and British troops will be involved. And that is the rules of the road. That is why Vice President Harris spoke out very clearly while she was in country this morning in a speech she gave that said, Article 5 is Article 5. We will stand by that. If there is one incursion, it will be dealt with firmly and fiercely. So that is one set of circumstances. Can you keep U.S. troops out of Ukraine? Certainly, because the Ukrainian troops are proving to us that they have the mettle to fight Russia. We used to think, at the start of this, look at 190,000 troops amassed on the border. They'll roll into Kiev in 2 days.
That's
you just said it. 3 weeks later, these guys are bogged down. The Ukrainians are beating back some of these troops. But if we don't support them, that will not last. And it's only if we can tip the balance with the Ukrainians on the ground does this whole process of trying to get Putin back to status quo ante going to work.
Rick Davis, Jeannie Sheehan being faced with very difficult questions on a daily basis here on the air, and I love talking with both of you and appreciate your insights.